Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is a joint council workshop with the City of Hardeeville, Town of Ridgeland, and Jasper County. So welcome, everyone. Being a workshop, and since I have the microphone, the normal rules that we observe, I'll learn how to speak, is we're kind of relaxed in the Robert's rules. I asked anybody who wants to speak to please get the microphone passed down to them. There's several on this table. We ask that you wait until the previous speaker has given up the floor. So, having said that, and called the meeting to order, I'm going to pass it right over to Mr. Josh Brewer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Pleasure to speak to you today. I want to basically walk you through how we got to having this conversation. And so while they're pulling up presentation materials, this really started back in June when you had your first joint meeting. And so I would imagine most of you can recall that, and that you know one of the outcomes of that meeting was a request to all three staff to sit down and have a conversation about how can we more efficiently use our emergency services. And so today I'm going to kind of start off by talking about the history that's led up to this discussion today. We're going to go over the evaluation guidelines that we talked about as staff about how we were approaching this discussion. We're going to then look at a proposal to create fire service areas, and we're going to go into depth about what that looks like. And at that point in time, we're going to hear from the county, we're going to hear from the town, and we're going to hear from the city about kind of what our respective thoughts are on that concept of creating fire service areas. Ultimately then, if you've indicated that there is support for the concept or framework that we're talking about today, one of the next steps coming out of this would be the discussion about potentially engaging the services by a third party to help us really dig into the details that you're going to need to have if you're going to make informed decisions about whether or not it's in the best interest of the public to go in this direction. And then lastly, we'll talk about coming out of this meeting, what our next step should be, where we should be going with these discussions, and that way we can have some expectations with you about what we should be doing as staff and what we should be bringing back to you for your consideration. So in discussing the history of this matter, I really start with looking at the population growth and changes in this area over the last 10 years. Now, these numbers here come from a couple of different sources, the census, a couple of other places, State Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office, but generally speaking, these are estimates. So don't rely upon these as being hard and fast numbers, but they give you an idea about what it is that we're looking at. And so the population of Jasper County has grown by about 2,900% over the last 10 years. The town of Ridgeland has grown by about 10%, and the city of Hardeeville has grown close to 300%. So we'll acknowledge we are the ones that are probably driving a lot of this conversation because we are the ones that are causing a lot of the changes to occur within the area that is leading to the inefficiencies at heart of what we're talking about. So what used to make sense 10 years ago may no longer make sense today based upon what's happened in terms of properties being in the cities or properties being in the county. Along with that, call volume numbers have correspondingly increased. Whenever you have more population, you're going to have more calls for service. As you all know, the cost of services has not gone down, is not going to go down, and is not likely to go down at any point in time in the future. It is going to continue to cost us more to provide these services in the future, which then begs the question of, are we using the existing taxpayer dollars in the most efficient way that we can and getting the biggest bang for our buck? And then it also allows us the opportunity to re-examine where do we have our various resources and how can we go about staging and organizing those resources so that we can continue to deliver superior services to the public, but do so in a way where we're not having to pass a county fire station to go provide services to city residents and vice versa. The county's not having to drive past a city firehouse to go serve residents, because that is the inefficiency that we're talking about trying to eliminate. So in starting these conversations, we laid out what probably could be called ground rules for these discussions. Because I wanted to make it clear kind of what we internally as staff were looking at as far as how we were going to go about having this conversation. So first and foremost, I can tell you that every jurisdiction at the top of their priority list is making sure that they can provide efficient emergency response services to anybody. And as you can imagine, when somebody calls 911, they don't really care whose name is on the side of the vehicle that just shows up. They just want somebody to get there and get there quickly. And so at the end of the day, that is always going to be the highest priority for every jurisdiction, is ensuring that there is quality emergency response services provided no matter what. The second item that we talked about was, this is not an exercise where one jurisdiction is trying to take over the service area of another. Each entity, the city, the town, the county, all provide services, and we all provide services for a reason. What this is an examination of is, how can we take those resources and reorganize them so that they're not overlapping with one another. But again, at the end of the day, we are not trying to eliminate anybody else's service, and we're not trying to have our service taken over by anybody else. So that was one of the ground rules we had. Along with that, again, no reduction in force. I can promise you there are quite a few members on all of our fire departments that are watching this meeting as it's taking place, because they're very concerned that the outcome of these discussions is going to result in them losing their job. That is not what we are trying to do. We are trying to look at the existing resources and how can we place them throughout the county to maximize the service area and reduce those redundancies. So that any proposal that we are ultimately to come forward with will eliminate those inefficiencies and prevent jurisdictions having pass one another and then maximize taxpayer dollars. The fire service areas would eliminate service based upon ownership status or where the property is located. What I mean by that is, right now, if you have an accident, if you have a fire, if you need emergency medical response, you call 911. 911 says, what's the address that you're calling from? The dispatcher takes that information, they put it in their system, and that system then generates something that says, you're in the county. And if you're in the county is going to be deployed to go respond to that. Even if that means that a fire station that's owned by the city is right next door to that area, the county still will only get dispatched because it is a county-owned property. Similarly, if you call, you say, I'm in the municipality, you may be right next to an ambulance that's run by the county, but we're going to be the ones responding to it because it's going to come in as a call that's within the city's responsibility to respond. So this would eliminate service based upon the ownership of the property and really much more focus on the geography of an area and having one entity provide service to all residents within that geography area. Yes, sir.
How many situations do we have that in the county?
So we're going to go in depth into a number of maps and show you kind of where these overlaps are occurring. And there's going to be an opportunity for both the county, the town, and the city to go through what their proposals are to reduce that. The only thing we will dive into that as projects. And then lastly, at the end of this, if we are successful in creating these fire service areas, we believe it's an opportunity to more clearly and transparently inform and educate the public about how much it costs them to receive fire and emergency medical services. Because if you have a service area that is defined and you have a budget that's adopted for that service area, there is a clear, direct connection between what you are receiving and what you are paying. Well, it was working in some just a second, my gun. And one, you've been advanced on your own. I'll just, here we go. There we go. All right. So, along that line, we've proposed this concept of fire service area. So again, eliminating whether it's in the city, whether it's in the county, we'll just draw boundaries and we'll have one organization be responsible for providing services within those boundaries. This would require the adoption of a separate service area budget. So right now, when the city goes and approves its budget, we are approving the budget for the fire department as an internal component of the city's overall budget. If we go forward in this direction, that would be changed in that a separate budget for the fire service area would be adopted separately than your general operational budget. And so again, it's a more transparent way of clearly communicating what the cost of providing services to the public, because those amounts are no longer being commingled with the need to provide services within other departments. It would only be exclusively for that fire service area. And then all properties within the service area would pay the millage that's identified as being necessary to support that budget. So again, it would not look at whether you're in the city, whether you're in the county. It would just be the millage that's adopted as part of the fire service area budget. There would still be the ability to contract for services with adjacent organizations. This does not eliminate that. There's always that opportunity to say, hey, in this particular area, even though it's in our service area, we think it's more appropriate for you to provide service or for us to provide service. And as long as the two entities agree to that, it does not preclude the ability to contract for service. And then ultimately, all of this would be backed by a countywide mutual aid agreement that would ensure that regardless of what service area you're in, there would be the ability for other jurisdictions and other entities to respond to calls under that countywide mutual aid for you. All right, so the last thing that we're going to talk about before we dive into the different proposals and the maps is really the criteria that we were using to help draw these maps. So the things that we looked at are the historical calls for service. So we receive a lot of data from the county and really appreciate everything that they did to help pull together data about who's calling for what service. So you use that to create a heat map to show where are the majority of calls coming from that we need to respond to, and whose resources are best positioned to respond to those calls for service. So then there's the identification of the current asset locations, who has a fire station here, who has an ambulance there. And then lastly, I know I put in here the City of Cartersville proposal, but as I mentioned, we're going to hear from both the county, the city, and the town before we move on to the next steps. So I'm going to take a pause right here, and I'm going to turn it over to Chief Wells, who I think wanted to share some data points along this, and then we'll go to the town. I think Dennis wanted to share some points from his side, and then we'll go to Steve, and he can present points on behalf of the city. And then I've got a couple of slides to talk about the consultants and next steps after we've gotten through the maps. All right. Rusty, for the lead.
All right, thank you, sir. Esse é o que SWR Lars. Let me read that. People take his years worth.
Yeah, if you take out the down, it should work.
We're working on it. I apologize. It's all right.
There you go.
Good afternoon, mayors, members of council, Mr. Chan. Thank you for the opportunity to come up and just present the data. At the inaugural meeting, we were asked to extract the data and provide those numbers to you all for consideration and evaluation. Just moving forward, some important definitions to understand. Shared services, again, joint response with your or agencies to increase efficiency and or the level of service without additional financial obligations to a partner agency. Mutual aid agreements are formalized agreements between two agencies or more to provide upon request the assistance in responding to a call for service. There are stipulations and may be made for apparatus type response to geographical areas where responses are made. Contract for service, one agency assuming responsibility as Administrator Brewer had indicated the potential for contract services, but one agency assuming responsibility for an area at the cost of the original responsible agency. A prime example for that is Jasper County currently pays the town of Redstone to cover a geographical area surrounding the town that's in the unincorporated area. Automatic aid agreements are formalized agreements between two agencies to provide automatic aid without request, assistance, in responding to a call for service. Typically indicates stipulations as per the aid agreements. CAD, which is a computer-aided dispatch, that's our system. This is a computerized system used by our 911 center to manage and coordinate the dispatch of resources and personnel in response to calls for service. A call for service is an incoming emergency or a common emergency notification, regardless of the number of agencies and resources assigned. RMS, Records Management System, computerized system utilized by law enforcement, fire, and EMS to manage and organize information related to the agency operations. And then a call for service, CFS, that's the internal tracking number that every call for service is automatically assigned by the computer-aided dispatch system that is specific to the 911 center. Incident is a term used to refer to each agency's response to a call for service, which agency generates an incident at the moment they are assigned to a call for service. The call incident nature is assigned by the 911 center to define what type of call it is. So an example would be chest pain, abdominal pain, or vehicle collision, things of that nature. Types is the group has been added to the report data to clarify group of call natures, fire, medical, motor vehicle collisions, also known as MVCs. Incident number, this is the agency specific number assigned by the CAD for each incident. There's one incident number assigned per agency per call for service, regardless of how many personnel, apparatus, or stations are assigned. And then the classification had been added to the report data to clarify and group call natures more specifically than by type of state. Examples would be a brush fire grouped into their own vegetation fire and a county with structure fire. Station, again, is the primary station responsible for responding to the incident. Again, the example would be Station 1, downtown Risley. Though this is from the CAD system, refers to specific areas within the station area that is used to determine not only the closest primary station, but to determine closest additional stations. So when we look at the zone, a lot of times we'll call them quadrants. You take, a geographical area, slice it up, and then if Station 81C is the western aspect of Hardyville, and Station 83A is the eastern aspect of Station 83. If you had a call for service right on the border of 81C and 83A, based on the response plan, that would be your resources that would be dispatched. That's how the computer-aided dispatch system will instruct it. So the area, this is the area that the report will clarify where zones and stations are located. Again, we divided it up into County, Ridgeland, Hardyville, Ridgeland contract, and a tri-response zone. The tri-response zone is a very unique area of I-95, and we'll get into that. Call times, just refer to the moment that the call for service is received and generated in the CAD by the 911 center. En route time, when the apparatus is actually marking that they're responding. Arrival time is when they get there. Response time is call time, and the arrival time is defined in NFPA 1710. Affiliate organization and deployment of fire suppression operations, emergency medical operations, STADOPS, and to public by current box service. Drive time, again, that's you go en route, you arrive, the time in between. That's how long it took to get there that you drive. So our data source is from our Motorola Flex computer-aided dispatch and record management server. It is hosted by our Nautilus Communications Center. It is Consolidated Public Safety Answering Point, PSAP. All agencies within Jasper County are dispatched out of the Consolidated PSAP. Data retrieval is obtained through the Flex server utilizing Crystal Reports, which is a third-party reporting software. And then the methodology would be data is exported from the Crystal report into Microsoft Excel format. Resulting data is then converted into a table And then additional fields are added such as area and type, and then we move that into a pivot table built for the data table to display it in a consumable format. So here we go. So from calendar year 2022, January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2024, we'll see the trends are continuing to escalate as Administrator Rubric had indicated. Our calls for service continue to increase. So you can see here throughout the PowerPoint presentation, Hardyville Fire Department will be in blue, Ridgeville Fire Department will be in green, Jasper County will be in orange. So as we come down just a step, again, from 2022 to 2024, you could see we've broken it down into fire calls for service, medical calls for service, and motor vehicle collisions. Motor vehicle collisions are a unique call class. You can have motor vehicle collisions for property damage only, injuries, entrapment with fire, which will change all of the response plans that are associated with that. It was significant enough that we wanted to just hold that and put it in its own clause. Incidents, again, as we continue, we're stepping down. We're getting a little bit more granular on the calls for service. As you can see, activated alarms, aircraft incidents, explosions, fire hazmat. Again, the callers are just coordinating in. Again, this is from January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2024. So in 2022, we're kind of extracting that out just so that you'd have an opportunity to see that. And one thing that we'll discuss as we continue down and getting granular is shared resources, automatic aid, mutual aid agreements. You're going to see those numbers in which agencies are responding to a lot of the same calls. It's through the agreement, so they're there, but there is. As the Administrator Ruber indicated, the river, I think we could do it more efficient. 2023, again, you can see that we're tracking them on these data sets from a very high level. Any questions on those?
Chief,
Yes.
under motor vehicle collisions,
Yes.
do you have a subcategory that shows how many of those are identified?
I think we could extract it. It'll take a little bit of time, so I think we could very, very well extract.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Keith, on the when you say Ridgeland, Jasper, and
Hardyville. Yes.
when we have Jasper, does that mean that Jasper got it? And let's say we can't.
No, sir. These are the raw numbers. So when you see, we'll take the example, the medical call for service 1,160 for Ridgeland, and then 4,044 for Jasper County Fire Rescue. That's where Ridgeland has responded to the medical call. We may have also responded to the same medical call, but it generates an incident number for them and for us. So that's where we're starting to see that. It's not that they are, all combined into one pot. So we're just trying to break that out so you all have an opportunity to see how the data is breaking up. So Jasper County, these are the northern ends of the county. So the Coosawhatchee, Robertville, Grays, Tillman area. And what you'll see, and while it's very difficult to, I think that's the one. Yes. Okay. Hopefully. Oh no. All right. I won't do that again. I think I need that. So what you'll see is there are some numbers down there in which the town of Ridgeland has responded out into the county, outside of the municipal boundary, outside of their contractual areas that they respond to. They have provided a mutual or automatic aid response into those areas. But again, it's there. It's just very difficult to see. I'm sorry. This is going to be in the town limits, so Ridgeland Fire Department within the municipal boundaries. Again, what you will see is that Jasper County Fire Rescue provides the ambulances. They still respond to medical calls for service. So that's why you're seeing that correlation within that. There was a brief period of time where you only responded to a very limited number, not everything. So they weren't responding to knee pain. They were responding to critical life-threatening events. And so that's the difference or the gap that we would see with the medical calls for service. Presently today, they are responding to every medical call for service in their area. Again, you can see structure fires, commercial structure fires. Again, that would be more than likely an ambulance going to them. It still is a responsibility for us. Our personnel are cross-trained. They're fire certified, EMS certified. But most of the time what you'll see for the fire part is a ambulance. Occasionally we may have a fire apparatus within it. This is going to be in the contractual area. Again, they are responding to the medical calls for service. Again, we will send an ambulance to support them. So a lot of times that's what you'll see is on the structure fire. Occasionally there may be a fire apparatus, whether that's an engine or a tanker, supporting each other. So this is going to be Jasper County and Hardyville in the southeast portion of the county. That's going to be the Cherry Point, West Hardyville, Levy, Bellinger Hill areas of the county. What you'll see is that these are numbers to the county, the unincorporated portion of the county, where the city of Hardyville has come in and provided us assistance, either through automatic aid or mutual aid within that. So this is Station 20, which is Bellinger Hill. It's the extreme southern end of the county. What you'll see is the call numbers are there. Over the span of 3 years, this is actually a volunteer staff-only station, just based on the call volume. The investment for staffing it could not be a good stewardship of the taxpayers' money, so it's a volunteer station primarily. But you can see that the city of Hardyville has also had a response in there to assist on a structure fire. This is going to be Levy proper. This is on Levy Road. Again, you can see this is 3 years worth of data, very high speed, very high level. But yeah, you still see where the city of Hardyville is continuing to provide assistance to the county, to the county. Station 34, this is Mead Road. This is the Argent Boulevard, Cherry Point area. Again, you can see the calls for service, very diversified. The vast majority are EMS-related calls. But again, City of Hardyville provides assistance to us just as much as we will provide it to them. Station 35, the CW West Hardyville. There, the vast majority of the calls for service that we experience in the county across the fire service is emergency medical service calls. So that's just unfortunately where the bulk of our calls for service remain. Station 81, this is actually the city of Hardyville. And you can see that we continue to provide assistance in that. Chief Camp, correct me if I'm wrong, November 2023 is when Medicaid Free came online. So when we get to Station 83's district, where Medicaid Free is housed, you'll see a creation in that gap. But again, that isn't until November of 2023. Station 82, Argent Boulevard. Again, you've got those numbers there. Our clerk to council has a hard copy of the presentation of these slides. We'll be happy to provide them to you here in just a few moments. I apologize for that. Station 83, again, now you're starting to see where the gap is being created. Again, November 2023, Medicaid Free came online. We're seeing a substantial reduction in county resources coming to that area. providing assistance. We still do, and always will, do what is in the best interest of the citizens in which we are charged for serving. And then Station 84, that is Riverport. When did that station open? I tried to remember. 2 years. 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Okay. So that data is reflected in, but again, medical calls for service and motor vehicle collisions tend to lead the way for that area. This is that tri-area where the town of Ridgeland and city of Martyville will hold the vast majority of the fire-based calls for service, medical calls for service, motor vehicle collisions. Again, motor vehicle collisions lead the way. It's I-95 between the 12.5 mile marker and the 15 mile mark. Dry time analysis. I promise you, our GIS specialist is way smarter than I am. I'll butcher the algorithm, the name of the algorithm, but what we'll see here is Station 1. The green is 0 to 5 minutes, yellow is 5 to 7, orange is 7 to 10, red is 10 to 13, purple is 13, 15, and past that it just doesn't calculate that down. What you'll see is that Station 1 can respond to a significant portion of the district. When you get out on the left-hand side of the screen, that's Tillman. That's actually unincorporated county. That's where you'll see those response times increase. These are the county fire stations throughout on the outskirts of the town of Ridgeland. Again, Tillman, Marsh Cove, Knowles Island, and then the airport station is there. So for the city of Hardyville, you can see we left the municipal boundaries on, and part of that is where the lower right portion of the screen that actually is getting into Beaufort County. Some slides that we'll show here in the next couple of slides is going to show drought times that extend into Beaufort County. So we just wanted to really break that out to identify that. But you can see City of Hardyville is doing a great job on being able to respond to the vast majority of their areas in that 0 to 5 minutes. Here's where West Hardyville County and Cherry Point Fire Station for us are in this similar areas. And then Station 84 extending down into Lee, and there what we'll see is that Station 25 and 20, that filling in on those high areas. So in closing, absolutely support and agree the administrators' discussions. This is a very complex issue. Our recommendation, or as the county fire service, our recommendation is that we feel it is prudent and necessary to consider a consultant. Number one, because there is an extremely large amount of data and numerous data sources. There is an extremely important task that requires specialized knowledge and software. While these were exported to an Excel spreadsheet, they were exported in a SQL database, which requires scripting and programming well above what our capacity is. And then any findings from a consultant eliminate potential data concerns or corruptions and establishes recommendations neutrally. And then we would just encourage that all three entities draft a request for proposal, present it in a joint meeting of the governing bodies, and then an equitable distribution of investment. That way, we all have the proverbial skin in the game. We're all vested, and just recommend the consultant receive diversified data, our records management system from the 911 Communication Center, our records management system for the County Fire Service, as well as the town of Ridgeland and City of Hardyville Fire Service. That gives them a true, abundant amount of data to digest and bring back what we believe would be a robust recommendation in the best interest of the citizens in which we're trying to serve. Do you have to answer any questions?
Would anyone from the three entities like to ask any questions of Chief Wells or Mr. Rube?
I think Councilman Mount.
Hi, Libby Malphurs of the town of Ridgeland. Clearly in all of the divisions, whether it's Hardeeville, Ridgeland, or the county, the medical calls are overwhelmingly the biggest issue.
Yes.
Is there something different that we can do to handle these medical calls than what we're currently doing in the municipalities or county? As far as having just an ambulance service or additional, I don't know what is being discussed nationally. This is not a unique problem, just our area.
You are correct. I think that a lot of the challenges that we are facing, if we look at the community and its growth as well, and we look at I-95, there are going to be monumental challenges to provide and deliver that new SOs. It's not, I'm trying to think of how I want to word that. When you have fire apparatus that are responding to the medical calls for service, they have increased fuel costs, increased maintenance costs. But again, it's a prudent and necessary service that we provide to our citizens because we want to be there as quickly as possible. We want to stabilize what is going on. We want to get to definitive care if they need. And historically, the fire service has had more fire stations than EMS. And if we look at the history of everything, the fire service has been around for hundreds of years. EMS was born out of combat in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Now we're in the proverbial cobbler phase of the EMS. So we'll continue on.
Right, I mean, that's my concern, is that we have firemen going out for medical calls when clearly you need far more medical personnel to respond to emergency situations that we need. Not that we don't need both, but we need far more medical personnel to handle all of these medical calls in maybe a more efficient way than some fire truck.
Yes, I think if it is the will of the council to explore that with a consultant, that may be our best avenue to identify out, again, what's fiscally prudent for the citizens, what will bring them the greatest return on their investment, all while improving delivery of service. And I think that that's probably the direction we would recommend their council.
I have a question. With the CAD system, is the current software that we have compatible and expandable to the kind of vision that you're laying out for us here? Or are we going to have to do some coordination and investment on how that software is working? Because I just had that as a question. I'm not sure. And the second thing, picking up on what's just said, what we've talked about was the medical requirements. To me, it talks about the profile of the kind of folks that we hire and the kind of training that we do. We need to make a large investment across all of our areas and how we're training our existing personnel, particularly for a lot of these situations that are now to. So those are my two concerns. Thanks.
All right. So for the computer-aided dispatch, I am going to yield the floor to our subject matter expert, Mr. Philip Coffrin. He is communications manager. He is a super user. He raised a dispatch and probably will be most effective in answering that question. And then I'm sorry if you could restate your second question.
With all the calls being related
Yes.
to medical, it seems to be that that's a tremendous profile in the hiring and the training that all of us need to assume so that our staff is comfortable going out and well equipped. And I'm not sure how many dollars are going there now, but I would think it would have to increase in the field of that.
Well, I think I can quickly answer that. I don't want to speak for Chief Camp nor Chief Wands, but I think that historically, for what my observations have been in the tenure I've had, We have all made robust investments into improving our capacity in delivery of service to our citizens. And I think that we will continue to do that and provide the highest quality of service that our citizens demand and deserve.
Do you feel comfortable top where we are right now with pushing the floor?
I was confident that yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Chief, before you leave, and I do have one question. Maybe I missed it up there. The I-95 corridor from the state line to mile marker 12. Did I miss those statistics on that stretch of road?
No, certainly the tri dispatch area is a unique. It's an anomaly. It's kind of it's between the two municipalities. It's an incorporated area. Graceland and Partyville respond to that corridor as a dual dispatch, and we get involved if it's a motor vehicle collision with injuries or medical call for service. We will have the closest EMS unit on that.
Okay, so basically then it's broken down by the service calls within that area by each unit.
Yeah, that was just an anomaly. It was what we call the tri-dispatch zone, so everybody's got some degree of responsibility of the nature of it all.
Okay, thank you. So, I'll make sure you answer this part.
The basic answer is it depends on how much you want to spend. And the way the CAD system stands today, it is broken down into the zone for the kilometers that you referred to earlier. So those could be further reduced in size, which would, in effect, increase the accuracy or where you're coded from. The alternative to that is to use ADL, which is basically tracking where units are at now on that vehicle locator. So that obviously is going to cost more because you got to add your vehicles by some method to transmit that data. The CAN system actually already is able to receive it, which means there's a couple of pieces that will have to be purchased.
That's my question in the algorithms, the work, but you're going to have, I would think you're going to have to purchase some additional pieces of software. I think continue.
Yes. So the purchasing of additional software, I believe we have begun exploring that. There are several methods in which we could do that. So for our ambulances and some of our fire apparatus, we have an iPad. We could do field reporting based on that. It is a cellular-based device. Law enforcement currently has it. It's called no, it's not the MDT. It's the Cradle Point. I'm sorry. Cradle Point, which is a cellular-based device. They can parse that. They can pull the data and where they're locating from. And I believe the sheriff's office is made tremendous strides in that. But again, our radios, if they're set up for GPS coordinates, they're going to a high-performance data algorithm within the radio and parse that data as well. There are avenues to do this, and we have begun exploring that for the conversation. What that specific cost would be, we have not arrived there, but we'll be happy to report that back through our administrators.
My last point is that with the consultant that we're talking about software and their experience in this is a critical issue, and I would think that that's a more tougher person to find, but the software to me is critical. The routes and all those things are a lot simpler, but that software to me is the thing that I'm most concerned about.
Yes, sir, and I believe that I won't speak for the administrators. There's a good possibility that they have some services that they are very familiar with that they could reach out to. And as far as the consulting services go, my personal experience is that there are about 4 or 5 out there that I know of, and then through industry contracts, we can get some referrals as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Chief, I absolutely agree with you that somebody neutral has to look at all this data, has to be put into something that could be distilled into something understandable. And even at that point, I'm not really even sure, you can't turn one light switch off and turn another one on in a couple of months or something like that. What do you foresee this process taking to get to a point where it's realistic that it might happen, or we can save the taxpayers' money and get to that?
Yes, sir. I totally understand. Again, we're here presenting it to you. So all of our council, seeking out the policy and the guidance again. I work for the administrator, and will do whatever my task and order is. But we have to research that and get back to you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Butch.
Yes.
So in discussions early on, overlapping services is what we were trying to avoid clearance.
Yeah.
And with overlapping services, first thing comes to my mind is inefficiencies, and so low costs. You anticipate this lowering costs with Citizen Death County or costing more?
I believe that a consultant is going to be the best source to guide you, to guide with you through that policy decision. 3 or 4 accessory.
I make a level for you. I do, but pass it.
Okay. 2 things. One is, you want to hire a consultant. Has, in this discussion, have you have specifics that you want this consultant to do, or is this the next step?
I will yield that to the administrator, sir.
So the hope with this conversation is to get direction that the framework that we're talking about is something that you support. Obviously, there's a lot more data points that you need, specifically what the financial impact is, not only to the respective departmental budgets, but then ultimately to the taxpayers. And so that we know we have to bring that information back to you, but we don't want to engage a consultant to say, hey, just go come up with something and bring it back. We want to have it more tailored, that this is the framework that everybody's supportive of. Build us a program that's within this framework. So that's what we're hoping for today. And again, I'll cover that a little bit more towards the end of the presentations. But I think that what we really need from a consultant is 2 things. We essentially need a financial analyst who's going to look at what is this going to do in an impact from a taxation standpoint, from a millage standpoint. And then we also need that person to partner with somebody like a retired fire chief to say, what do we need from an operational standpoint? Where should these things are located? And based upon call volumes that we're seeing, what types of equipment and personnel are going to be needed to meet these needs? So you take both of those informations, you put them together, and that's hopefully the plan that we can bring back to you.
Have you considered that there's 2 different areas of Jasper County? One is urban, one is rural?
Yes, sir.
Because I see some of those numbers, and I'm saying, well, the numbers are, you can't take those numbers as, because it may be
Correct.
different areas.
That's it. They are not distributed uniformly. The numbers are concentrated in certain areas, and are the areas that you expect.
Thank you.
I have a couple.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I asked this question many years ago, and I get it asked all the time, so maybe I need a refresher. Why do fire trucks go on medical calls, and is that state or local law?
There is no law for that, for one. We send our fire trucks on medical calls because every one of our members is D&T or paramedic. So they can begin treating that patient as soon as possible. Now, a lot of times, like Chief Wells said, the fire truck would get there first and they can start treating that patient, and especially on your critical patient where every minute counts because every minute is brain cells or cardiac cells. Either way, we send our fire trucks to get there first and start the treatment, and then the ambulance really comes in and swoops them up and takes it to the hospital. So we have the trained personnel on scene every time our fire trucks go.
I think one of the things that you told me years ago was, and you used the example if someone gets stuck in
on the side of the toilet and you have the equipment to extract them. Is that also one of the justifications?
Absolutely. More hands, you know. Unfortunately, in this society, our PC rate is greatly increasing, and you got to have more hands to get people out of these places they wind up in.
Okay, I think that, I asked the question because I think it's good to know, as to whether we're talking to our citizens. I did ask Alon Carmen, why are you sending the fire truck? And so thank you for that answer. My other question, well, first of all, I think it's important to know, and why I asked the question about I-95. You know, there's a lot of motor vehicle accidents, but if they're on I-95, that takes a lot of resources from all of us who are on that service area. And I think it would be helpful to know what's internal roads and what's I-95.
Yes.
As far as a consultant goes, every one of us up here is going to be asked to vote on spending money. And I always get a little queasy when I hear the word consultant. And especially when I don't really understand why we're doing it in this case. See, I understand for someone to break down what the millage responsibility is, but I don't know, to hire somebody, a retired chief, to tell us what our active chiefs should also know. I get it. I'm a little unsure why we're going to spend money on a consultant to analyze the data that we already have. What are you going to do with that data that's going to require a consultant that a mathematician can't do? So I'm a little unclear what that aspect of a consultant could do. And when you talk about the millage, I understand it. But spending money to have somebody regurgitate the data we already have, I don't understand.
And that's a very understandable question. So as I indicated, in my mind, I think there's two component pieces. One's the financial analysis, and I bet you indicated there's a lot of calculations that go into that, and there's a lot of detail that I don't know that we appreciate about debt service, the existing bonds that may be out there, things that play into not only the operational expenses, but the ongoing expenses that need to be paid for by properties that are in certain areas. And so there's a number of variables to work for, and while I think our respective staff could get there, it would quite literally take them off with their day-to-day routines, and they probably have to sit down for several weeks to several months to gather all that data and to make all those calculations. And so there's an efficiency standpoint to that side of it. Now, on the other side of it, the operational side of it, you are correct. And I think, as you've seen here, we have data. We have the ability to do some modeling about who's best positioned to provide services. But if you ask Hardeeville who's best positioned to provide services, they're going to tell you Hardeeville's best positioned to provide the services. And if you ask the county who's best positioned to provide the services, they're going to tell you the county's best positioned to provide the services. And so by bringing in a third party is somebody that does not have an allegiance or attachment to any of those. They look at the totality of what we're looking at, and they tell us, based upon their recommendations, this is who is the best suited. And it may be the municipality and it may be the county, but it eliminates the concerns that I guarantee if our staff brought forward a proposal, the county is going to likely question it. And if the county brings forward a proposal, we're likely to question it. But if we both agree on having a third party look at it, we're agreeing to accept the outcome of that analysis and bring it forward. So that's the justification why I think both sides need to come together.
Well, I think it's going to be very important before any one of the 15 of us up here could spend money, that it's very clear that we understand what they're going to do.
Yes.
Because again, if I don't believe a consultant could tell me that Station 81 is closer to certain unincorporated areas than Sandy Road is. So I think we all need to understand what it is that we're asking this consultant to do that cannot be done by our own staff. And so And just one observation, I think, for all of us. We look at all that data and all those medical calls. And I know, I can't speak for Ridgeland, I don't know your budget, but I certainly know that Jasper County in the city of Hardyville has loaded up their fire departments since I've been here the last 10 years. And the ambulances, no. And so maybe that has to be looked at.
Yeah, and that would be a part. It's looking at what are the operational needs of our community now and what are the needs likely to be in the future. And what does that translate to in terms of resources? Do we need to have 3 more ambulances than we do today? And if so, who should be running those? That is absolutely the type of information that we need to bring back to you. And to your point, and as Chief Wells indicated, a next step in the process would be us working on putting together a request for proposals that would outline scope the consultant would be responsible for, and we bring that back to all of you for approval before we move forward. Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea what the cost of
Not yet. This is so unique and so specialized that's very difficult to find comparables to draw to. So I really couldn't give you a best.
Oh, when you come back to us, we would know that.
Yes, I was going to say, before we move forward with the contract, we're going to have to get approval from you, and part of that will be telling you what we think it's going to likely cost. Thank you.
Josh, can I just see the Harry's point was well taken on the consultant.
Yep.
In my mind, when I hear consultant, I'm thinking not necessarily, and it's not out of disrespect, or a retired police or a fire chief, but I'm thinking of like a McKinsey type company and someone that's done that kind of work that has a broader perspective, software things. And to me, if it's that kind of consultant, then they are going to take some of the concern out of his question and my question. So that's, and that's a critical factor, what the profile of the consultant is.
So I would say I'm not aware of any firm or any organization that would have the technical expertise to handle all of these aspects. And so what I think you're likely to see is a team approach. And so, yes, I use that as an example of I'm trying to convey that we're going to need somebody who understands the needs of public safety services and can help advise us in terms of what resources we should have, given what they're seeing based upon the call volumes, the maps, the service response times, and all of that. So that could come in the form of a retired fire chief, or it could come in the form of a professional consulting firm if they have that kind of expertise.
And it may be a combination of several firms that had A, B, but C.
Yes, sir.
Josh, what I think you were saying, the way I understood it is once you get the consultant, you would like somebody like a fire chief or something like that to work in conjunction with him to come up with the areas and coverage.
Well, that's it, because we're anticipating what are the questions that you are going to need answered to make an informed decision about whether or not this is the best for Jasper County residents. And so I think in order to do that, we have to be able to tell you what that service level is going to look like and then what that translates to in terms of personnel, equipment, and cost.
Josh, and I just want to say, I'm listening, I'm hearing data points, I'm hearing consultants, I'm hearing stats. Let's not forget the human factor in this. We've got us sitting here, we have chiefs, we have managers, we have all of this, and we're talking people. We have to put some of this other aside and look what's best for the folks. The finances, we'll figure this out, but the finances have to be secondary in the service that we're going to do. And I just want to make that clear because I appreciate all this information, but it's overwhelming, and I'm still thinking about what is going to be best for the people of Jasper County, of Ridgeland, of Hardyville, how we can do that to service them. That's who we're all supposed to be doing this for, not for us or not for anything else, it's for them. One thing I also want to say about sending a fire truck with an ambulance. In my life, it's happened twice, where if it wasn't for that, the outcome would have been a lot worse because it took both of those ambulance attendants to work on my family, and it took a fire engine to drive that ambulance. So that is something I will always appreciate and always support.
So two quick response points. It is not an accident that the very first bullet point that I led off with in terms of the guidelines for this discussion was that these SAP members care more about making sure services provided in terms of then what jurisdiction is doing what it's going to cost. Because you're right, at the end of the day, the service delivery is what is the most important. Now, the second point about the dual dispatch, and I will tell you, for many, many years, I was that same skeptic of why does it make it why do you have to send two vehicles? Well, one will do. What I would encourage you to do is this. If you have not gone on a ride along with your fire department and your emergency medical services personnel, do it. And I don't want to speak for the fire chiefs, but I have to imagine they will be very willing to facilitate that, because what you will see is that when they show up on site, you don't have two paramedics working on somebody and then two firefighters just standing around twiddling their thumbs. There are things that they're doing about managing the scene, managing the family, handling the data entry. I promise you, if you conduct a ride-along with your staff, you will be enlightened as to what it takes in terms of providing that service.
I just wanted to dovetail what Steve said. I used to have that same question that Steve and his guys have met at my house with family members over 3 times, and the ambulance crew could not have done it without Steve through theirs. If anybody's got any questions about that, I think that should be care of it. But you're right.
All right, I'd like to preface this. First off, I have to recuse myself for any votes or anything. I don't care. I've mentioned this every time we've had any discussions when it comes to shared services because of my position. However, being probably the subject matter expert on the elected body here, I know the day ins and day outs of emergency services. I do have a lot of questions with this that I would like to see the towns as well as the cities, and I'm going to be surprised by all because I haven't been at any of these. So, but Councilman Mearsman drives the point home. Everything we do here is for the people. And we need to make sure that we're doing things operational in efficiency and effective for the people. So I want to hear what the others have to say here and comment a little bit later.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I used to run rescue, so I know a lot of the stuff that's talking about the dual response. There were times when me and my partner, we were 2 females, and on scene, and you're talking about a heavy patient. There's no way you're going to be able to put that patient on the backboard and roll them out safely. So, of course, we call for manpower, and who rolls up? Firefighters. And they would also help us in managing that patient, because at the end of the day, at the end of that call, it is due low harm, and it is all about the patient. So whether it was a humper or a ladder truck or whoever was available that showed up on site, we were very grateful for that additional manpower that came in. So as far as the dual response is concerned, I totally get it. I understand why it's necessary. So going back to the PowerPoint where Mr. Gruber, you said about the fire service areas would eliminate service based upon ownership status in unincorporated or incorporated areas. Mr. Phillip, how does the CAT system know if it's in an incorporated or unincorporated area?
So the CAD system is pulling response plans using those zones. So one of the examples was Station 81, A, B, and C. The CAD itself doesn't really know what's incorporated or unincorporated. It just knows for 81A, I need to recommend this versus 81B.
Who makes that determination?
Hi. So I tell the CAD, A1A will get this response. A1B gets a separate response. It's just sort of set.
I'm gonna help clarify that for. I'm sorry. So The CAD, computer-aided dispatch system is a lot different, right? So it's a geographical information system. It's the map we know. So in the city of Maryville, by the time the original were annex a parcel of land, then they would send over what is called a shapefile that would go into a layer of the municipal boundary within the geographical information system. And so when the CAD would pull that address, right, they look at where the call was occurring in getting the 901 address coordinate, that layer is going to show up that, for example, it's in the city. So based on what Chief Camp and his staff, or Chief Gons and his staff, have done in identifying out what would be a response plan for the call sign. So if it was, we'll say, a residential structure fire, then it would be, we'll just use just a very simple example, 2 engines, a truck, and a battalion, and an ambulance. So what the CAD system is going to do is when you take the geographical station and you divide it out into its quadrants, again, going back to the 81C being western, 83 Alpha being eastern, it matches up when that address code hits right in there. The CAD is going, okay, these are our closest resources. This is that response one. It's going, okay, out of all of the county resources, here we go. These are the 3 closest resources. This is the closest truck. This is closest ambulance. And then that comes up on the computer-aided dispatch screen, and that's when they mark them and assign. Does that help clarify?
It does to a certain extent. So what Mr. Phillip did do, so would the dispatcher be able to manipulate sending the calls out? Is that, I understand this is a computer-aided dispatch. So would the dispatcher be able to manipulate those responses?
Ultimately, yes. So they're going to get their recommendation, and that's literally all it is, a recommendation. So you always are going to have the human customer. So they may know of a reason why that is necessarily the best recommendation. That recommendation is made on criteria that was set on the back end, which may not be in the front. So, for example, they may know of a medic unit that happens to be closer. Like, for example, maybe you have an accident and from a hospital, and you've just had a medic unit clear. As things say today, it's going to recommend a medic unit that will be further away you're selecting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the medic unit that will be closer will be the one that will be punched out to that situation. Because like we were all saying, time is cell death, and we had to worry about the outcome for the patient than anything else. I mean, the best outcome for the patient is a rapid response, the shortest rapid response.
And that was part of tying it back into on vehicle location services. Right.
Yeah.
And please bear with me, Chief Bonds, don't get mad at me. Okay. If we went to the tri-dispatch zone on I-85, and his unit was not able to make that turnaround and had to come all the way down to exit 8 to return back to prison. And a call for service went out at Dunkin' Donuts. Okay. And his unit was the closest. If that was how we transitioned and moved to, you could very well have engine 1 responding to a call for service at Dunkin' Donuts across from the hospital, and then the next closest ambulance coming to it as well. Now it's unique, right? Because engine 1 is supposed to be for Aberration, but here it is. I announced there's an article responded to a call, and it's just those anomalies. But again, that's getting into on-land vehicle locations, and then doing the geographical layers, and then computer-aided dispatching on that element. So yes, there are tremendous opportunities within that.
But we don't have AVL calls. We don't have.
We did not have an inflate at this moment. We really truly have begun those discussions, And what we'll do is as we get closer and closer, have identified out what would be a reasonable prudent plan on investment for that, then we'll take it back up through our leaderships.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question. This state sound like a dumb question, but is there not radio communication if we don't have the automatic vehicle location, which kind of seems crazy considering, I mean, I have Life 360 on my daughter. I know where she is at all given times. Like, we can't afford Life 360 for firefighters. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to be flippant here, but it seems like we should be able to know where our individuals are, where our units are. Is there not radio communication?
There's.
And that
There
has
is.
changed the prediction of what should go, who should go there.
Correct. And again, if, let's say that engine one, again, was coming at the 9 and we didn't have AVL set up, right? Then the officer in charge of engine 1 could theoretically key up, let's say that engine 81 and medic 83 were dispatched. Engine 1 could theoretically key up to engine 81 and say, hey, we're coming off at the 9 Southback. I believe we're closer. Would you like for us to handle that call for service? Then they could say, without a shadow of a doubt, sure. I don't want to speak for Chief Bonds and I don't want to speak for Chief Camp, but I was trying to lay out an example of how that could work.
Councilwoman Malfors, that's been going on for this 25 plus years I've been into service here, so that happens. Yeah.
Can we get rid of Ann Hardyville an opportunity to allow there?
We've answered everyone's question. That might be a very appropriate time to turn it over to the town of Britain.
I mean, I'll play it in the game. Yeah, concept.
That's boardrooms. All right, good evening, actually, dear older bank. Pleased to say we're not going to throw any more statistics at you today, so we're going to try to keep this high level. But what was really interesting to me was, as I heard all the comments here, cost, consultants, AVL, for example, a lot of those concerns actually are going to jump out here for my presentation because, we also have our own perspective, and obviously it's not going to do the same as Harleross or the same as Jasper Cambridge, but we did want to, I know Chief Bonds made a point, or he's going to kill me if I didn't. He wanted to talk a little bit about Bristol Bio Park. More, but you go to the first slide. It just kind of introduced the Ridge Art and about a little day about it.
This is we have 12 full-time environment, 5 part-time pit, and volunteer. Our ISO is a 3, which I'm sure most people know about. I've seen comments before that says, well, is ISO really important? It's very important. And reporting to the TAC fair, that's saying it. If it's, there's massive difference. You have classes 1 to 10, obviously, and then you have straight classes and split classes, and so it kind of is over straight 3. That is something that Chief Bingledorf, when he was still here, was able to get before he left 2016. Hardyville just went to a recent, went to a 2, so this is a pretty big accomplishment. We have a fire contract that we call about the unincorporated. We took that over 20 years ago in Jasper County. Our ISO was 7/10, and now they have since improved to 4, right? And so, but when we took the area, we were able to take it to an ISO of 3, and so that was something that people, you talk about taxpayer area to see.
I mean, as far as on the trees, so.
We work pretty well with the different agencies, and we are also in the process. February 1st, 2026, we'll have our BLS license, and so we'll be the same as everybody else. For us, it was more of we were trying to keep staff for a while, and so now we have a pretty big group here of moving through here. And I'll step out of the way, like him, go over a few points. I'll say this: it's just my perspective. I'll look in the end, and I'm trying to understand where we all choose is this as far as the consulting goes. But I think I think sometimes we can get too far into the weeds of some of these numbers. And I think if we look at some of this essentially I think what everybody is saying is how do we do it the best? And so if we kind of look at some of our areas, just because municipalities grow, they push out. If you look at kind of all the stacking in Jasper County from Rizzo and Rizzo. We're all dogpile on each other inside around the municipalities. And that's just a natural thing from town's growth. I think the perspective is not kick the county out. It's not it at all. Nobody wants to take anything away from it. But we look at Bridgeland, the other corporate areas. We have different places. Today say the same about us. This is where this conversation originated from. Exit 18 in Ridgeland. Let me bring that up quick. Hardyville runs down. We come down to a certain point, then we stop. Then the county comes a mile from the other way past us to that way. It's not an ISO issue because it's on the roadway, and both of us are fast spot. No, that's why we do that. That makes no sense, And so, and vice versa. We brought this up. Hey, we'll take that. You take something on the other side. Same thing for us. 462. A lot of that's in the city, and it's from that's what was annexed in parts of Cherry Point Road. It take 15 minutes to get there. You have 2 engines down there, and so we swapped. We went to the 16 in the city, and then the county would have come in, and from the 13 to the 16, they would have raised an article. It came in at 13, and so we said, no, you take the 462, we'll take for this. I'm not saying the consultant's not going to do that. I think a lot of this is common sense in that perspective. When we look at some of this, it's got to come back to the accountability that the municipality will take some of these donut holes, that their fire stations will have to be there. But then if you look at some of the overlays, and then the county's able to put their stations, the personnel in the other stations, because we kind of locate one in Nutland, 4 Deer, so there, that's nothing against the county. You are doing everybody. I think that's where the conversation probably rooted from. That the county would want to, I'm sure they're going to fight on their behalf. I don't know how we can make a bigger difference though if we don't start there. If we don't start with, we are all on top of each other here. Who can run that? How can we take that personnel and push it to the county? We're not adding any other personnel, we're just putting them in the right spots. And so that's just
Chief, I love what you just said. And let's go back to the consultant. Before we hand over to a consultant, shouldn't we define those service areas? In other words, and Josh says it all the time when he talks to her, there's a circle for Hardyville, there's a circle for Ridgeland, there's a circle for Jasper County. And, give that to the consultant so that he knows how to take it from there. If we don't define what each of our operants are, because it's common sense, I agree with you. We don't need a consultant to tell us that, Arnieville should be here, Ridgeland should be there. But once the consultant get it, if we don't define it in advance, how are they gonna know how to break down the faxes and all the other things? Is that,
that's exactly what I'm saying.
that's what you're saying, right?
You're going to see that here in a minute.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that, I'm just saying I think a lot of that will put that kind of into place, because, for instance, if we say, hey, we'll cover this area, the county may say, he has an annex, for us, what about Bridgeland, not Hardyville, and that's something we have to do, just make it hard. But I think, that's the only kind of place to start to put some of those parameters. I know I've already given you kind of too. It's them. I step out.
Mayor Williams, I got a special slide of consultants at Yulin was.
Nope.
We didn't collaborate against Selma.
So there it is. So to kind of follow up on what you've said, we really believe it's if you go to the next slide, very important that we start off on the right foot. And what that really means for us is defining exactly what it is we want to do. And we also believe that our elected officials have to be involved in this. They have to buy in. We do not want to spend or waste time and resources coming up with plans that the councils can't agree on. We think it's a waste of time. And I've heard the comment about people. Well, we need to involve the staff. Let's get their opinion. Let's get the opinions of the people on the ground. Let's get them involved.
there's a lot of fear. You know, when everyone hears shared services, the first reaction is, oh, how to raise my dog. And that's a fact. But the reality is, when you really look at what's happened in other places, those responsibilities are just generally shifted. When you lose jobs, you're just putting in resources where we're complete. But it's our job to communicate that to people in the field. Next slide. So, where we go from here? We really thought it might be best that we'll start for the smaller project, smaller service there. Let's start with something small before we go on in. I think we have to communicate to the public what we're trying to do and why. People need to understand if a Ridgeland truck shows up in a county, they need to know why. Vice versa, if the county truck shows up in Ridgeland, our residents need to know why. And we certainly need to maintain a, well, I think big regional, we have to stop thinking risk or Canada. I mean, we are a region, we are growing, so we have to work together. And then back to the original point, we really think we should start small, in our opinion. And from there, I think we can come up with some models that we might roll out in other areas. Excuse me. So, next slide, please. So I think, again, from our internal discussions, we think a smaller arrangement at the beginning could kind of help us reach some consensus, some buy-in from the people in the field. We also think that hiring a consultant, I think you really need to define what that mission is going to be. Quite honestly, we have the data, in my opinion, where we can come up with statistical models that show, even predicted models, who should be responding to what. So I don't think this situation is that bad. All right, next slide. The consultant slide. Who's familiar with Dilbert, cartoon Dilbert? Scotty Evans is the guy, and he says something that, you know, kind of just stuck with me over the years. He said, consultants have credibility because they're not dumb enough to work at your company. And there's some truth to that, in the sense that sometimes the answer is right in front. It's not always, you don't always need a consultant to tell you how you should be doing this. Now, that's not to say that you don't need a consultant at times, because sometimes there are very specific situations that require a very unique skill set. So I hope I didn't offend any consultants in the room. We also think it's very important that we have a steering committee to kind of give this some direction on where we want to go. And, you know, it might be a good idea to have an elected official for each jurisdiction on that committee. All right, last slide. Last, these are just questions that we had that, frankly, we're going to need answers to, which is how will the costs and revenues be allocated amongst the three governments? Say, if we want to invest in ABL or CAD, how are we going to split those costs? Which entity will be the custodian of the funds? How do you handle potential liabilities? Who's going to own the property? And ultimately, who's responsible for the financial reporting and the audits? So these are all questions that need to be answered if you go to a full shared service. So that's really it for our presentation, but we hope that you consider some of these things as you move forward through the process, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Dennis, have you guys discussed that? What you were just talking about responsibilities and stuff amongst the administrators?
Yes, initial.
Initial, okay.
We don't have anything memorialized or, any IGAs or anything like that. Are good. Yeah, we have some ideas on how those services are being passed.
I have a question. I like what you said about the consultant, not to offend any consultant either. But I know they used to say if you get you a key, you need somebody to tell you the time. You can have the watcher, the consultant will give you the time. That's right. But on the same token, and I don't want to get was the group any hot water here, but what he said about a consultant before, why it was necessary in this process, and if you could repeat that, I wish I had that on tape, but it was beautifully stated, and I think the neutrality of this whole situation is critical. I think everybody up here would agree life safety is critical, but you want to send the right equipment, you want the right efficiencies to go to those calls. I used to say, the optics of a fire truck going to an ambulance call is bad. I've asked that question even before I got on this council. It's just, it's like somebody bringing a sledgehammer to take out a nail in your wall or something like that. You don't want to overdo things either, and the cost efficiencies are what a lot of citizens are concerned about. Of course, they want to save somebody's life, and that's the most critical thing. But on the same token, this neutrality, I think, is critical to me. I want to see that more than anything else. And if life safety comes first, and it costs that much more to do that, that's fine. But we go that route. Thank you. I appreciate your slide. It was very simple, but yet clear. It was very good. Thank you.
Mayor, is this there? Last thing. So the chief original made a lot of sense, kind of rounded it out exactly what I thought we would do. Now, I like what you said about start small somewhere. The CAD program, if you had a CAD program and you made changes in it on a small basis and test it, and you want to change it again later, that could be done, right? And so if we took an area, is Mead Road still overlapping?
Yes.
Kind of like the big problem we got? So I'm suggesting maybe that we all think about working that area, Mead Road, in CAD, I don't know if programs by cost. It sounds to me, and I'm just getting feeds here, there's a whole lot of stuff that we're talking about doing. And I'm kind of trying to say, why are we not doing what I thought this original was, which was shared services and trying to save money? And then I heard about, what's the most important thing. But remember, everybody at this table at the end of the year has to go to the budget. And we had to figure out, you go get what, where we're going to get the money from, and be frank with you and tell you there's a couple of things that we really need that we don't get, we can't get. Because, 9% thing says that you run out. I don't want to get off on that. But I like what you said, and I hope that we'd all agree to meeting, test running that way. Thank you.
I don't like consultants myself. There are times when a consultant is needed. We are in discussions, in general discussions. This should have happened what kind of should have had a plan. To do little things right for now. We could do Mead Road, we could do all that. But if it works, that's fine. But if it doesn't work, then we're all going to say, hey, it didn't work. We're not going to do it all. I think it's a great process, but be a process that you have. What scares me is what you brought out. Are we just setting up another level that we don't need? And I think that's where we have to look at, and this is nothing against anybody. It's just we need to set it different eyes. That's all. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. And we can't make a decision until we know how much it's going to cost and where the plane is going to be. And I think my first question is do we have a definition of what we want from the software? Until we get that, because we should make a decision on this up yet. That's just my personal opinion. And thinking small, yes, you can, but if we start, let's say it does work, is it going to work every place else? We don't know that. I mean, we could set up places, and we know it looks very easy to say, okay, B Road, Steiny Road, same thing. But I just don't know if that's going to work as a whole thing. And we need some different eyes. It's not against anybody, but I've learned here that sometimes when a consultant comes in there, you say, yeah, I should have thought that for myself. Stupid. I should have thought it myself. And I did. It's just something, and we don't need to say yes or no, but maybe we can work on top of that. That's all. So
So, thank you.
Steve, voilà.
Good afternoon, mayors, chairman, council members. We kind of approach this along the same lines what Mr. Brewer said earlier is how do we best provide services to citizens, whether they're in City of Hardyville or Jasper County. Can't speak for reason, I'm sorry. So what you see here, what I've done is we went to our GIS people, and this is our current city limits map, okay? So everything inside the green is currently inside the city limits. And what we did was, county council back in the day approved a growth boundary. And then we had our GIS people with the growth boundary on there. So this is the city limits growth boundary as set by our county council. I mean, I'm city council, by the way. But yeah, all right. So everything you see there is inside the growth boundaries. That's where we do not plan to go outside of that. So after that, we then looked at what we could offer based on this. And this is real far out there. So everything in the purplish color is technically in the county and outside the city limits. And as you can see there's several areas that are completely surrounded by the city. And on the right side of the map is Highway 170. So that is a split between Jasper County and Beaufort County. So the right side is cut off by Beaufort County. The lower end, this large portion, is Maureen Plantation down here, which probably will not never really develop. But everywhere else, we're surrounding all of these purple areas. Inside the city limits, And so our thought process is if we're already providing services throughout the city, because that's what our citizens pay for, can we offer those same services to that area? So we came up with a new map, with a new overlay. But basically added everything that's now purple, which was in the county, would be covered under the city of Hardyville. We already have the stations, we have 4 stations. Everything in this is within 5 miles of our firehouses, so it doesn't cost us extra money to build new stations and staff new stations. Would we need to upstaff some? Possibly. We definitely would get another ambulance service that serves. But this would allow the county to then reposition some of those units that are inside this area already. If you look, they're not really covering a whole lot of mass areas. Specifically, and we just covered He Road. That's the coverage area of He Road, that purple area. When you get up closer to the very top corner, that's where 36, I believe, is out up there. The new station starts coming in from that direction. So the Reed Road station goes there in purple, where I don't have them up to, but our firehouse basically sits right at this corner. So pretty well in the center of that area. I'm a very visual person. I like to see visuals versus data numbers. You don't know what we're talking about. This is the area we're talking about, specifically on that end of town. That would allow us, or allow the county to reposition that apparatus wherever they so feel the need. Over here, yes, we're offering to do some of the red just to try to help the county with that area. We used to cover it prior to 2019. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar. We used to have a contract to cover both of those areas. And in 2019, I'm away. That's their choice. I'm not going to bring the scab off that old room. But we'll go anywhere within $5 of our firehouse, is what I'm trying to say. That way, the efficiencies are there. There's no, well, who goes to that purple area? Is that the county? Is it, like, worry about that anymore. If it's one agency that covers it all, they cover it all. And that's what we're having to do. There was some talking on our meetings about Levy, but that is another whole different area down in the south here, which would be something along those lines. But that's a good discussion today, but that was our last team by full. So, terminate off. So basically what I'm saying is we have the units, we have the capabilities. You're within 5 miles of every firehouse, and your RNIs are pressed too. That would actually increase the service ratings for everyone in the county areas in that service area. So, any questions?
Population in how many more residential units do you anticipate if this comes to fruition?
Are we in that purple area?
Yes.
If I gotten that part.
What about the area?
That is, most of that on the south end is the Savannah Wildlife Refuge, so there's nothing there. It goes to the state line on the interstate, there's nothing out there. Some of the northern end of there, there's probably a few thousand homes, maybe. Sorry to pick that area.
Okay, thank you.
That's off of the old Charleston area, that area.
I'm going back to my consultant thing. I don't need to pay somebody to tell me that that makes sense. And I'm not sure that Richland can come up with a map that we don't need a consultant, that would make sense. And whatever's left should go to the county. And I don't think I need to pay somebody to tell me that. It seems logical, makes sense. And this is what, and I want to go back to, putting everybody's mind at ease in terms of people. How many firefighters have we added every year for the last 10 years?
In the last 10 years, we went from 27 to 51.
Okay, and I don't know about Ridgeland but we're constantly, I know you come up, you ask this for a zillion people every time, so we're constantly absorbing new personnel. This is not a conversation about anyone losing their jobs at all. I think that there's enough need throughout, whether it be through attrition, retirement, and just plain growth. Steve asked a question about number of people. We have right now, not built, but entitled master plan, 16,000 single-family homes and 3,000 apartments. We're going to continue to grow, which means we're going to need more firefighters. So I don't see where any firefighter in this county should have any fear that what we're doing here would result in someone losing my job.
Well, Mayor, it's only at 9, so you see him up, we'll be all here at 9.
Mr. Kessler wanted it recorded. That's what that's doing. So we can go look at this entire meeting after this. So please, speaking Finway.
I just wanted to say that I agree with the mayor. I mean, when you look at the map like that, it's just common sense. So that's my 2 cents.
Chief, at the beginning of the meeting, the staff said Hardyville is almost 50% or a little over 50% of the county's population now, and the growth, Ms. Mayor stated, is going to continue. I hope the whole county as a whole continues at a large growth rate. But I have to look at this and I see, why is the Levy area being left out? Are we splitting the county in half?
Originally, when we started the conversations, we were talking like this. And like I said, the last meeting, Mr. Fulgham said, what about Levy? And we can absolutely absorb Levy. We would have to favor. That's a different monetary situation because then we would have to relocate the firehouse to make it better suited to where we could cover it with our currently 84 and only 1 fire station where they currently have 2 down there. We actually, if we could build 1, then we could cover the entire south end of the county at that point and do exactly that, which is just have the city cover everything south except 13.
We're continuing growth on that side of 95. The number of homes that is even going to be coming in here, plus all the industrial down there. It just, to me, doesn't make sense that we're going to cut the county in half and leave Levy sitting by itself. Because then we're going to be back here in a couple of years with the same discussion.
We're willing to work with it. It's really
What does that
Steve, isn't that kind of a quasi-independent?
It used to be an independent fire department. It was probably last year when they was all, what, here for? 2 years ago, it dissolved into the county. So the Lee Fire Department does not exist.
Okay. I was wondering, I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the things that consultant could do is study the feasibility and what the cost of putting Leedy into that section. It was, you'd be talking about it through fire station equipment, things like that, which may be redirected from some of the other areas if we do this. But that's it. I kind of agree with Mr. Mearsman that it seems almost silly to cut Levy out of, out of the equation. So maybe there's some
Real back help us. So what Mr. Rue was saying is that whatever that tax rate becomes, then whatever those houses illegally pay, then they pay for that station and those personnel that are down there. So that solves that. They pay for their fines.
Does the county currently have a station in Belize, correct?
That too.
They have two. Age-wise, new, old, where are they?
20 is a fairly, well, the newer one, and 25 is, it's been here longer than I have been around here, so.
Where about the other?
20, I believe, was
In 2007, or in there.
Probably in the whole park.
yeah, well, they only kind of states 2, I believe.
Four, okay. It's just,
That's the volunteer, that's that fire station, he said is volunteer, based on the call, whatever. It's not.
okay, I agree, that's going to figure into an equation, but my question is can it be serviced prior to a new station?
Sure.
Sure. That answers the question.
There may be a little bit of where the mileage doesn't quite overlap yet, but definitely can be searched, sure.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question for Ridgeland. Can you come up with a map for Ridgeland like this?
I've got the talent in it to make it.
Because if we all agree, then we've pretty much defined the boundaries. If you have your map, we have ours. We could leave here if the 15 of us had some thoughts. We could define the service areas right here.
Again, I will say that this makes total sense after looking at all three agencies with their presentations. The area that I represent the county is the northern area. We look at those northern areas and we want to make sure that those that are in the rural areas, we've got that initiative that we want to keep the rural areas rural in Jasper County. The municipalities, they're going to continue to grow, and when they grow and annex and different things, those donut poles will shrink. But the rural parts of the county, to where those are fire stations and EMS stations are currently located, they are understaffed in my opinion. So where we have those overlaps here in both municipalities to where the municipal boundaries coexist with the rural areas that they can serve, we could definitely push people to the northern end of the county. And this is not an uncommon thing here, because back in 2005 and 2006, when they introduced the fire service contract areas, not the fire service areas, the initiative of that was for the municipalities to handle those areas and to focus on the northern end of the county to enhance the fire services. I think now that as you're seeing the growth in both municipalities, we can actually focus in and do what we set out to do 20 years ago and enhance those underserved areas. Because here in Ridgeland or Hardyville, if a call goes out, you may get an engine response in less than 5 minutes. But if you're in downtown Graves and those people matter just the same as here, it could be 10 or 15 minutes. So I think we really need to make sure that we have a focus on those that are under-serviced. And if we can move things around and we can save certain folks money, and reposition things. I think that is the best for, again, the people of Jasper County, because at the end of the day, everyone wants to pay the bills.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's something I've said for a long time. I think it, coming back to this, I made this comment being a stretch from before. It comes off almost, we seem like alpha males having an uneducated conversation. That's really not it. You know, it almost, if you look at it from the outside, we almost look like they draw a line. Sounded like they're over here. And I sit back to look at that kind of 10,000 foot view, and that's just not it at all. I know it could come off that way. No, you don't run our area. It would be, no, how do we just utilize it better? You know, what we're doing and what we had. And so I think this does that. I mean, we work well with everyone, and how do we position ourselves for the future? We're going to show, this is the town. We don't have a GIS guy, but working on that. And, but with our current, basically with our current 5 mile district, used to do a circle around Station Y. We had for about 20 plus years now. And then we had some, our next station, we've heard 18 months, how I'm to speak as far as that, as far as Tarboro. That is part of the growth boundaries as far as they've set. This will be going, it's about 2 miles outside of the city now. We'll be pushing up what's like Tillman area. So that would be our hope in the next 5 years. That would probably be our only station. We had to have a third. We put in for, you know, as far as for exit 22. But for the time being, that would be our next move. We'll be on top. And so if it's, we would be able to push some and get some of these areas fast timber. You have some areas so far if we contract out, and then Tillman comes towards us and push to 10. Wagon Ranch through, hit some areas instead. So if we get the second station, we'll be able to cover that. But real quickly, this Mayor Williams, what we want to do is pretty much identical to what Chief Campus are showing. We're going to show you our municipal road boundaries, and then we'll do an overlay that shows the town limits in our current fire district. And when we at our second station, that's an additional 5 mile radius. So we believe we can expand services and fill in some of those donut bowls that we see more efficiently for the taxpayers. So currently, there's a station, every station is up there on the family case pro. There's Tillman would be the POs, but other than that, there's nothing out there. So we think we can cover it far more effectively.
Just for clarification, on the ISI, if Hardyville's with 5 miles and goes into Jasper County unincorporated, we benefit by that, correct?
Yes. Okay. If you're on the automatic dispatch,
We've always talked about, the mayor's talked about, it's very obvious that where the numbers are. But have we looked at future? That we know, at least we'll be told, that Levy is going to be probably the biggest growth area after Hart. That's going to be the most praying, the Hatwa. We're going to be setting up, after the UHAR district, we're going to be setting up a report there. So have we looked at that to say, for example, we built Lee Road and Steige Road, and we duplicated 5 miles. If we would have moved Steine Road farther north, we would have covered more people and lowered the ISL.
I'll say yes. I have looked at it. I've done the numbers. I know about exactly where that firehouse needs to be to Knott's and Kenja on A4, A1. So we'd be able to cover the rest of Lee. We would actually add in the Scaffield element down there, which is currently not within 5 miles. It would actually be able to completely cover the rest of Lee with the one firehouse. The other exactly where it's supposed to go. So
Because you have the port, Riverport, that has a firehouse.
Yes.
5 miles.
I took actually consider
It changes into Levy,
Yep.
almost to the point of the fire station.
it goes past.
If we would have moved the fire station farther south with this other fire station, we would have had a bit of cover.
Yes, the spot is actually halfway in between 25 and 20. It's on Dells Hill Road is what the spot is. And then they can cover everywhere that 84 cannot reach.
because it may not be great now. And that, what I'm trying to say is,
Call volume was.
it may not, the call volume is maybe what it is.
Yes.
But it's gonna be moving.
Correct.
And we have to look at that, so we don't get in the same position we are now. We should have done this maybe a couple of years ago when it was a simpler.
And if we look at some of our areas as well, are at the firehouse in the backside of the Margaritaville will actually be able to access the top half of Levy as well fairly easily. So it all plays in the future placement where we've already considered. I did the Levy thing just to see if it was feasible for us at one point, and that's what I found was the location where it needs to be. And then with our new spot in the back of Margaritaville, that's up to cover that whole plantation area down that way, allow you to as well.
Because it makes sense in Levy, because you're gonna be the one that backed that up, really. So you might as well be,
If the county was to stay, the next unit in that fire, the SCP unit, yes.
right, to be you, and then it would be Casper. We have to go through you anyway? Yep.
Right.
Correct. I thank you.
And you could talk about future 85 behind Margaritaville.
Yes, sir.
That's a ways on.
Is it?
Yes, I tend to believe, yes, it is. But my question is ambulance service currently in Levy, what's the closest ambulance?
Levy has one, Station
Levy
5.
Levy has one. Is run data on that comparable to the rest of your runs? I mean, more or less?
So
What I'm asking you is, if this all happens, will Hardyville or whoever have to station an ambulance in that area?
So currently, the vast majority of the calls for service that were presented today reflect that EMS, emergency medical services, is the vast majority of the calls for service that we are seeing holistically across all services. Jasper County Fire Rescue has 6 ALS ambulances in service now. Jeep Cam has 1 ALS ambulance in service. You have Layer Reserve, 1 in reserve. And then Jeep Bonds has indicated, you said February 2026. Yeah, it'll be getting first responder licensure through the Bureau of EMS for BLS, or basic life support. So we are working our way through that. But yes, the vast majority of the calls that we are seeing is emergency services.
Okay, the reason I ask is, here again, we're looking at maps and we're looking at statistics and we're looking at everything else. And let's not believe the human factor out of here, the people that are supposed to be serviced by what we're doing. You know, and I agree, you know, let's put everything aside. Let's put egos and everything else aside and do what's right. We have a chance to do what's right, which should have been done in the past, and we did. And let's make it right this time. So 10 years from now, people are going to be different people could be sitting here going back over the same damn thing.
Well, I think our first thing that was said was kind of wanted to see what this group of folks up here would to come together with some sort of consensus. My question is, Chief Camp, Bonds, Wells, could y'all come up with a map amongst yourselves? Something that you could bring to us as a suggestion. Is that crazy? Is that something that could be done? Because if you do it, I got more faith in it. And you know what? That's just up. And so I'm just asking y'all, I heard him, maybe animosity, whatever. Where are y'all at as a group of 3? Could y'all actually sit down in a room and come up with that man?
Chief, can I be in here just one sec, Chief?
Yes, Mr. Aguilar, like this. And that is, the maps already exist. And these gentlemen have already done that. Okay, so they've done that heavy listing. Everybody had won that, and they're prepared to share those with. Identifying those service territory areas, I don't think was terribly difficult.
Right.
Other than either more include Deegan and one of the will be.
We're more than happy to sort of
I think you got to look at everything holistically. That's the easy part.
Well, see, that's the kind of conversation that helps us. Because I have very little information. We've caught with 6 months, but this is the second time we really...
Yes, sir. And I thank you for that. That's what I'm trying to get across with this crowd of policymakers. You don't have to sort of edge us along to continue work. And we're here, we're doing it, we're actually enjoying it. We have a lot of stuff to do, but we're doing this, I think, it's a brief, open math. Okay, that's some good dialogue. So those maps exist. And that can be brought forward. We can perfect those and bring those forward. And then, as I see it, you've got a lot of low-hanging fruit items that you talked about, the AEL, all these other things that we perhaps could tweak and make our distinct relationships of services better, right? There's no reason to stop or wait on that or ask for a consultant to look at that. I think we could continue to try to implement those things and you do progress updates, how that the big issue is going to be once you've had these maps, you will agree with them, and we start looking at what the real cost of services are going to be at those areas. How are we going to pay? How are we going to figure all that out? That's going to be when it really gets interesting, and when we're going to need you, right? And that's when we may need some consultancy. And either that's a individual consultant, consortium of consultants, or whether that's just bouncing off a lot of the existing professions we already have relationships with, bond counsel, finance speaker, financial products, those kind of things. So how are we going to serve that? Who's going to pay for what? Because my whole fear is that EMS is the elephant in the room. Fire is pretty easy to talk about. EMS is extremely expensive. I need to tell you that. Probably about half of our entire budget. It's going to continue. It's going to get worse. And so I would like to have that outside look at are we really looking for the future? Are there different ways to do emergency medical service? Like, do we need to get into
Cluster.
community paramedic programs, things like that, where you're doing more like in-care services in the communities versus response. Right? We've got to look at what we're putting together now. Will that be what we need in the future? So I think we need a little help on that. And I think we need a lot of help on looking at what already is best of densities and what's about growth and how much does this stuff cost us over the next 20 years. Once you have that in front of you, I think that's when the real work begins. Well, I think it's insurmountable, but I think that's when the real work begins for you. And then I would suggest, as part of the consultancy, but we could also, once we're ready, have that go out to the community. That's the like community input, that's surveys of what are people willing to pay for what services in America. I've said my 2 cents, and thank you for that, Arch.
In the contract, as far as the service that the municipality provides, Carly's been done, and I know, I don't know about Hardyville, but I know you now contract for service area. And I know Jerome Kemp has struggled with allocating in an equitable fashion the money that's collected in the fire district, I guess, if I'm saying that's right. I guess from an equitable standpoint, will the money that's collected after you find it in those donut holes or the areas that once we split things up, in essence, is the income intended to flow to the municipality or to the municipality, or is the income as the county's tertiary? I mean, how will that be handled?
A lot of different ways we could talk about that. The added challenge that the county council does, see, they've been pursuing a plan for the last 20 years, push development to the municipality. As Mr. Rowell said, to sort of retreat and move back to rural firefighting, the little surface. Okay, that plan is active, continues to do, and we're at a phase now that this fiscal year they're going to be charged with actually establishing separate fire millage for unappropriated fraud. Okay, it's going to be a painful process, but the way that works is your fire millage, emergency services that you pay for, is baked into your general millage for everyone. All right. The Constitution of South Carolina says as we go forward, we grow and we start to be in the situation which is perfectly normal in today's world, where we have to start borrowing money and bonding to build fire stations and do things to replace a lot of these fire stations. She's inherited rights, that were built by volunteers many, many years ago, right? So a lot of the work, equipment, all those kinds of stuff. As we start to borrow money for that, we cannot, because the county, borrow money and use debt service from folks at the municipality to pay that service for rural fire budget. So what the practical implication of this will be is that when they decide what the millage rate will be to support that rural network of fire OF, not EMS, that will be reduced from the operating millage. And then a separate fire millage will be placed on all unincorporated properties. So regardless of what it turns out to be, mathematically, the general millage taxing that happens in a municipality will go down this next year. Now, I say that will go down. It's also a reassessment year, so it's going to be a wild ride, but that's what's going to happen. And then those folks on the outside are mad. Hey, it's a long-winded answer to try to answer your question is it's not as simple as defining the areas and establishing a village and then getting that to NISTA to provide that service, because all those properties, every unincorporated property, whether it's in that district or whether it's out in the hinterlands, is going to be the accessible base that's going to provide the funding for rural fire. And so that will be collected as whatever it is. The relationship of potentially the county paying a municipality to provide services is always there, but it's not necessarily going to be tied directly to the exact fire millage that property pays. Not so. Yes.
I have a question. Did the stability all that you no, and then this may be on the part is when an ISO rating changes for property, how are they notified?
I know when ours drops, we did public service announcements on our TV, whatever. A lot of times, it's daily thing that we get phone calls from the insurance companies going, hey, what's your insurance rate? Hey, what are you within 5 miles of this fire? This is happening. So we also provide letters to any resident that asks for one. We try to get the word out so that people can request those letters, and we get those letters to them, and then they can get out their insurance company and get that good rate. Generally, you don't want to do that if your rate goes down, which nobody in the county has done that. Thank goodness. So we've always raised the bar, so to speak. So those letters are available. I'm sure all three departments have that available. So any resident requests a bit to do is there's a letter saying that they're honest or what they're honest about it, yes.
And then one last comment. There's been a lot of, and then Jim and I talked about this a while back. And I've heard a lot of, I guess, free conversation. I've heard fire districts, I've heard shared services, I've heard all kind of things. What I take away from here today is that we're not really, and I guess there's not going to be a hierarchy, right? So everything will still operate independent and no governing authority over the entire county. Is that the idea?
The idea is to define those areas where each department can operate in and don't worry about going past another fire.
And then most of your Fisher.
Yeah, well, that's just the way.
And serve citizens the way they should anyway.
Right. So, and then the case that I brought up was there's 2 firehouses in that area. Now, my suggestion would be to Chief Wells was to take those personnel, move them to a lesser area so that they can service, say, Tillinger or something like that. So it's not that, and that will actually increase services in those rural areas and not increase the cost.
So, to the mayor's comment, nobody should worry about the job. I mean, everything, and it's the direction that I perceive that we're at. We're still all going to be the same entity that we are, and that we will continue to grow. Your city to grow, we can continue to grow. Nobody's got a little political fighting that they have to protect.
And one of those, I don't remember who put it, once somebody already put in one slide there, it was a countywide mutual aid bid. So that way, all departments are operating. Well, if they need help, they pick the radio up, say, I need help. And the next posted department's coming down. Yes.
Not so much. And it's I think common term for that in blended service is adult bucket, not consolidation, right? You're talking about potentially authorizing employees for each of the jurisdictions to work in some sort of extraterritorial fashion, right? For the whole good. And that's it. The no consolidation, no separate inspection.
Thanks. And this is not a new concept. There are existing services that are set out this way. One of the ones that I point to is the Bluffton Fire District. They serve both the incorporated residents of town of Bluffton and the unincorporated residents of Beaufort County. So this would be set up similar to that in that the fire service is going to provide the service, but the millage will be adopted at the county level based upon a budget that's been adopted for that particular service.
Mr. Fulgham, I have a question for you. How do you plan on addressing the double taxation issue for the citizens in Portage? Because we'll be taxed twice for these services and you're not getting from one. So how do you plan on addressing the double taxation issue?
Well, that will help this year. The emergency services could consist of the two functions, right? Emergency services and fire. State constitution says that we have to call fire out, or fire will come out. You will not be paying twice for fire. You will be paying your share for emergency services, but not for fire. Jasper County residents city residents are also Jasper County residents, and so they'll pay their base millage for EMS just like everybody else in the county, but they will not pay a separate fire millage to everyone else in the county will pay, but not the city.
So with this, if we have this reconfiguration going on there, would the citizens of Hardido still have to pay that base millage for EMS, even though we are providing the citizens of Hardido with EMS services?
Oh, well, it could go either way. Yes, you could pay it, and we could have an arrangement where we were paying the city these services, or the city could totally roll that, reduce our forces, right, or blend them, and city taxes, the county taxes would go down, and city taxes would go up to pay. Okay. So there are a lot of different ways to do it. How did that answer your question?
Yeah, you guys, thank you.
Could we all get a copy of those maps that you all spoke up earlier, distributed to all three elected bodies? And again, I think taking a common sense approach to this, again, we're not building empires, we're building services for the people we serve. We want to make sure that we serve them with the best government efficiency that we can to those. So I think we need to really sit down, and again, I don't have any skin in the game because I don't have a vote on this, but I will have a lot of questions for those that I represent in the areas that I represent in the county. But again, I think we need to take that common sense approach. As a consultant, the best shock and all value for the operational efficiency, probably not. To work the millage and all that, that probably would be a good thing to have a consultant look at that to make sure that we have the numbers arranged or some type of bond counsel or something that they're familiar with those. But I do think that we could take that common sense approach, look at this, the service delivery level for the people of Jasper County, because again, the municipalities will get bigger, the county service areas will get smaller, and again, we as Jasper County really have to focus on the rural parts of Jasper County to make sure that the rural population is serviced.
Are there any other questions? And if not, I think we need to discuss as a group what our next step was going to be. Do we want to meet? Then when do we want to meet? And I think if we set the timetable, we being the policymakers, if we want to hear back from our staff in a month or 2 months, whatever, then they know what framework. What we did last time, we just said, come back to us when you're ready. I think maybe as policymakers, we want to define or give a amount of time before, and then set staff to that timetable. Is there any conversation, any thoughts on what our next step should be, when we should plan next joint council meeting, and what we expect to have at that meeting? I'd like to hear what the thoughts there are.
May I just, I'll throw a shot at potential subdeliverable for 3 hours that I would think potential deliverable is to distribute the maps to city, busting the cans, or right, and I would take a look at the maps that service proposed towards service. we can continue to work on maybe some of its low-hanging fruit, right? To see if we could implement some of the dispatch change, protocol change, service protocol changes to increase efficiencies and be able to report out on those, right? And I think Josh and I probably need to put our heads together about potential consultancies or reviews by professionals, or at least fatal flaw analysis of flyer reader. Those are some suggested deliverables as far as that.
Just one additional to that. I think it's not just you and Josh. I think it's you, Josh, and Dennis.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. That's pretty easy. He's already kind of laid out, I think, some of the terms of their existing fire contract that they have with us. And I think that'll go pretty smooth.
Let's keep all players in the game here. And personally, I'd like to have some answers back by the middle of January. Because we're all going to be going into budget season not much longer after that. If we don't make a decision by then, we're going to drag this out another year. And that's not the way good government is going. The quicker we have an answer for everybody involved, even the firefighters involved, the personnel involved, the taxpayers, we are all responsible to the taxpayers. And so let's move this along. You may not come back with all the answers, but come back with something.
So when is the proposed go live date with any effective changes to this? Has anybody from the administration level, administrators, managers, did y'all put your heads together when we was one?
Yeah, as I say, I don't think we've set a target date, partly because we're not sure how much you all were going to be able to agree upon as far as the recommendations that we're bringing forward. I think ideally, as Andy had indicated, there's some changes that are going to be taking place as part of the next budget cycle anyway. And so to the extent that we can obtain all the information that would be needed, ideally we'd like to have this put in place by next summer, by the time you go start adopting your budgets. Now, how realistic that is, I don't know. I do know that there's a lot of details to work through that probably aren't as transparent to us right now as we will, that will come up as we have these conversations. If we want to set a target goal of trying to have something in an actionable form in time for you to adopt it as part of your budget process, to me that probably makes a little bit of sense right now based on what we know today.
If I could make a suggestion to the policy group up here, that we target mid-January, as Mr. Muser suggested, and you have ready by that time, the 3 maps. Hardyville, Ridgeland, the maps of the service area, and B, come back to this group and say, here's what a consultant will cost and what they will do for us. I think if we can accomplish those 2 things within the next month, then we'll have some sort of framework in whether or not we can get it into the budget for next year. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, excellent suggestion.
In get compliance with the law, what we absolutely have to change if we really don't even have to be considered? What are those?
You would have to establish that rural fire district. So that's, you have to do that so that you can continue forward with your borrowings and that you're compliant with the state constitution.
And can you hear that just step further? You said get compliance with a fire district. Can you just kind of make that easy for everybody?
Try to explain that currently all of the debt, you may have seen we did village reallocation the past year, where government geese were following it. He had it all wrapped up into debt service. We had now flipped some of those mills on their tax bills so that the debt service is only paying to them the obligation on debt, which is the way it should be, instead of other leases and other derivatives, bonds, and so forth. So he made that first initial, so just in spirit of being compliant and transparent, trying to get all that together that everyone's been thought of. The next step is those services, emergency services and fire, Harmon County Standpot, are embedded in your actual operating knowledge. And so they need to be removed from, fire needs to be removed from your operating knowledge. Everybody's nose would theoretically then go down the operating side. Correspondingly, a new millage has to be established for those folks in the unincorporated area. That did not go down the city park. So we'll be in deduction. Can't tell you the numbers at all. We're still battling to all that. That is the structural premise of what we're doing. Heard that tells.
Well, and we feel it twice. You already told me, but I think you tell me again.
Yes.
That I want to be clear on because we don't want to make any decisions. Okay, whatever it is, we do that. That's still being clear too.
I can't think you have to do it, whether it would be perfect, the millage, whether you will have to increase or decrease that rural fire millage down the road. I'm sure you're going to have to go through all that just because of all budget procedure, but you do need to establish it.
And this question is for both the managers and administrators again. We need to look at those road boundaries as we establish the rural fire service areas to where potential annexations come in the future to make sure that we don't convolute those special purpose tax districts or that taxable areas to where we have any type of issues that we've had in the past.
But we're talking about the maps. What exactly are we going to be looking at? Are we going to be looking at what everybody has presented right now? And are we going to be looking at the overlapping services, meaning the mutual aid maps? What are we doing? What kind of maps are we looking at?
I believe the goal of the maps would be to articulate what fire service areas would be created for the city, the town, and the county. That would be the goal of the maps. Now, once those maps are created, the second aspect becomes then what resources do you need to provide service within the maps that you just defined? And that becomes the second step in that analysis.
Can that information then be available then by January? Do we have the maps? We already know where the maps are.
Yeah.
And you professionals can decide, can come back to us then. This is the resources we have. This is the resources we will need to accomplish what this group was discussing. Is that a possibility?
I feel confident that we can get you the maps. I'm not as confident about answering the second question because I'm not sure Amherst Data will even need to make that determination. For example, just using what's up there on the screen right now, Burr. One ambulance will not cover that service area. Is it 2? Is it 4? I don't know.
I don't need to know the exact number. I'm just saying we will need definite improvement in this area, or we are okay in this area or this area.
Yes.
It just gives us a ballpark idea where we're at.
Absolutely, and we need to give that to you before you ultimately implement this. I just don't know how quickly we can pull that part together.
And the good news about the maps is, as Mr. Rowell said, those will serve as the maps when we thought about the road boundaries and plan concept did the same.
Okay, are there any other comments, suggestions from any of the governing body up here? I think as a courtesy, if the group bears with me, is there anyone from the public who would like to make a brief comment or ask a question? Okay, seeing none, would anybody like to adjourn or shall we continue?
Motion to adjourn.
We on the seconds. All in favor, please say aye.